That's right. I'm reading more of Happy Appy. If you haven't seen my first video on Happy Appy, then go watch that. It's a wild ride that kind of ended with me realizing that all of it was a massive joke of a creepypasta. Since the time of making that video, I've received lots of comments saying that the story isn't a joke or that it started out sincere, but the author called it a joke when it wasn't well received. I don't know what to believe at this point, so I'm just going to let the insanity that is Happy Appy permeate my mind in whatever way it seems fit. If you can hear loud cars in the background of this video, Happy Appy took the muffler off his Ford Windstar and has been driving past my place constantly since I made my last video about him. There's not really much else to say before we jump into the story. I don't think any amount of context could prepare both you or I for what we are about to read. Remember to subscribe if you haven't yet. I've been trying to reach 100,000 subs by the end of 2025, and I just hit 90k, so I'm getting really close. But without further ado, here is my further descent into madness with Apple Apple. July 23rd, 2011. It's been almost a day since I watched part 2 of the Happy Appy TV movie. It turns out that someone claimed to have the first part, so I asked him to email it to me. Turns out he was right. Here's what happens in the first half. So I'm currently reading The Stepford Wives, and something that I really enjoy about it is just how great it is at posing really interesting questions that it answers later on. Happy Appy decides to take a page out of that book with the phrase, "It's been almost a since I watched part 2, leaving the reader to fill in the blank for themselves. I'm going to try to fill that blank in without giving my own personal bias towards what my mental state may or may not be right now as I sit down to read this story. So from a completely neutral perspective, again, not influenced by my mental state at all, I'd say was probably supposed to be, it's been almost a complete and total mental breakdown that has caused me to question everything I know about myself and my personal identity as a content creator since I watched part 2 of Happy Appy. It starts with the carnival theme from the credits of part 1, but with distorted voices. The intro often flashed out to white. The concept of distorted voices is another classic creepypasta trope. I'll never forget SpongeBob's distorted, sinister laugh during Squidward's suicide, truly a creepypasta moment of all time. After when the original intro would play, it went straight to Happy on a medical bed dying from an unknown disease, with children at this side. I don't know if I'm ready for this, guys. I love how this story violently bounces back between Apple being a sinister child murderer and then some sort of helpless, diseased piece of fruit. In the last episode, one of the final updates was an episode where Happy Appy gets in a car crash and is unable to pull himself from the burning wreckage while screaming in pain. I don't know if we're supposed to feel bad for him, but I can't feel bad for him because he's already killed a bunch of kids and also could have probably stopped 9/11 but didn't. Happy said in a loud voice, "They're coming to take me away." And it cuts to one of the younger children. He was trying to fake crying over Happy's death, but the single tear that came from the child was in claymation. I'm glad I'm not the only one that can't feel any sort of sadness for him. Even if he does die here, he always comes back. That line reminds me of a book series for some reason. I suppose the other implication could be that this is all a show and the kid is trying to fake cry but can't do it because he isn't actually sad. But I don't think the author cares at this point. Also, I have to talk about the inconsistency around the animation style for this show. It seems like Happy Appy himself is made of clay, but he interacts with real-life children. I thought maybe all of it was claymation, but the author wouldn't need to specify that the tear on the child's cheek was claymation if that were the case. To be fair, I don't know if anything the author does here has any sort of intentionality behind it. It seems like they're just transcribing the words they heard during a fever dream from the ghost of a failed author. That's my best guess as to how this was created. It played a solemn piano tune after another kid with a high-pitched voice said, "They're coming to take me away." It showed Happy Appy coughing up blood, and a few seconds later, his bed wheeled itself into a surgery room. What followed was an hour of stop-motion surgery. It was so horrifying, but yet so compelling. How did the episode creator create a decent surgery scene with puppets? Gotta love the narrator apparently finding the footage to be so compelling, only to describe it as a decent surgery scene in the literal next sentence. Also, can we take a second to put together a timeline of this Happy Appy movie that our narrator is watching? Happy Appy has a rock thrown at his car, gets in a fatal car crash, has a funeral service, dons the skin of a man, kills his wife and daughter, ends up back in the hospital with a fatal illness, and then gets surgery done on him. It's like an episode of Smiling Friends. It's pure insanity, and I kind of love it. No, Davis, don't let yourself become an acolyte of Happy Appy. A happy Appleite. After that, Happy comes out in a wheelchair, and the children said, "Are you okay, Happy Appy?" Happy said, "Yes, my friends," and gave them a large hug. Maybe it's just me, but the phrase large hug sounds so strange to me. It shouldn't, because a big hug is completely normal, but describing it as large feels like too formal. After that, it faded to a title that said 3 months later and started to fade in on the second part of the TV movie. but the video ended as soon as the fade stopped. Okay, I will own up to my mistake. I mixed up the timeline of events because I forgot that we got the second part of the movie first, and this is the first part of the movie that we're seeing afterwards. In my defense, I don't think this story makes much more sense if you put it in the correct order, but I can see that Happy climbing out of a man's skin and murdering his wife and child makes for a much better finale than post-op. July 24th, 2011. I got another episode today. One of my blog followers, who has a job in a daycare center in Seattle, mailed me a VHS tape. The tape had a white label that said, written with a blue Sharpie, Appy is the hospital doctor. He found the tape because a kid brought it in with him for whatever reason and started crying when he saw the contents. The tape began with a few minutes of static and then played the famous intro, but had new lyrics that didn't match the tune too well. Appy helps those kids. Happy. I really wish the author gave us the actual audio recordings of these theme songs because I'm having a hard time imagining what it sounds like with these strange lyrics. I already complained in the first episode that the theme song was missing a syllable in the "He helps kids all day" line, so I can only imagine the horrors of this even more disjointed version. It went to a POV shot of Appy running through a hospital for 2.5 minutes, with the choir singing Amazing Grace. Since I knew what Amazing Grace was about because of choir experience, I was prepared for anything related to death. I love how only through choir experience can anyone hope to know what Amazing Grace is even about. There's no other way. It's almost like the author is saying that he heard the instrumental of Amazing Grace, and since he knows the lyrics, he understands that the song relates to death. But the issue with that statement and that interpretation is that it makes sense, and this is Appy, so we can't have that. The choir is singing Amazing Grace, which means the audience can hear the lyrics, and the lyrics to Amazing Grace aren't that hard to decipher if you know, like, a little bit about religion, I guess. Fun fact on the topic of lyrical analysis, I made a series of lyrical analyses of my favorite band, The Deer Hunter, on this channel, so if you're interested in that band, go check those out. It cuts to Appy on his metal stick, doing his death smile for a long time. Like the two other times, he watched over any living thing near the TV with his uncanny, soulless, baby blue eyes. The death smile made his glare worse, giving an immense feeling of threat to anyone watching. Reading this entire story is an immense threat to my sanity. After the Amazing Grace choir ended, ambient noise started playing. It kept growing louder and louder, and it very slowly zoomed in on Appy. Finally, after 10 minutes of watching a clay apple staring you down with loud ambience, he says, "Hey kids, let's go find some children to help." He runs up to some body bags, holding bodies. Of course, that's what they do. While a nurse is zipping one up. Appy walks up to the nurse and says, "Hello, Mrs. Nurse, can I help those people?" The nurse says, "Appy, they're dead. They won't come back." Right before the credits, Appy turns to the camera with another death smile and says something that could be more disturbing than the natural scene and the staring scenes, and it made me cringe. Remember, kids, you will all die one day, and I won't be there to help you. Judging by what Appy has done to literally dozens of kids in this story so far, I would say that Appy will most certainly be there to help you die. This section also reminded me of something my younger brother told me happened to him when he was a senior in high school. He was killed by an evil apple. July 28th, no, I'm just kidding. Let me tell you about the story with my brother. We both took choir in high school, and our choir teacher kind of went off the deep end when my brother was a senior. He was already an odd guy when I was there, but things just got worse. My brother was the teacher's assistant for one of the women's choirs, and on Valentine's Day, the teacher sat them down and earnestly told them that most of them would never find love. The man was airing his inner demons out to a group of high school girls. He ended up getting fired, and I don't know where he's at today, but super concerning stuff, obviously. July 28th, 2011. A week ago, Jim told me that a fire had recently ravaged the studio that had filmed Appy. It wasn't until the 25th that I visited the ruins of the studio if I could find anything that could help me investigate Appy. Incredibly weird timeline here. Our last post was on the 24th, which means the fire had already happened, but we were never told about it. Then a day later, he goes to the burnt down studio to investigate, and now, 4 days later, he tells us what he found. You figure he would have just mentioned the fire earlier? After traveling on the I-5 for 20 or so hours, I had reached the studio. It was completely abandoned, but what was very strange was that no one was there to demolish it. After grabbing a flashlight and turning it on, I proceeded to sneak inside. Actual bit of writing advice here, you don't need to say grabbing a flashlight and turning it on. The reader will assume the flashlight has been turned on. Alternatively, you could omit that you grabbed your flashlight and just say that you turned it on. It's a small thing, but it'll make your writing flow a lot better. When I got into what remained of the lobby, I saw 2 rooms that weren't overly burnt or crushed by debris. a sound set, and a storage room. I want to talk about the setting of this story. There are a lot of people that are under the impression that the story takes place in Aberdeen, Scotland. It appears the story actually takes place in Aberdeen, Washington, here in the US, which means I live in the same state as the author. What an honor. Beyond just the name Aberdeen also being a name of a city here in Washington, Nickelodeon Animation Studios is located in Burbank, which would be about 20 hours away by car. So sorry for any of my Scottish fans. Happy Appy is unfortunately across the sea from you, but he will always live near and dear to your hearts. The storage room had a lock on it, so I went to the sound set first. It was massive, around the size of half a football field. Despite the sound set being large, the only things there were some remains of the green screen stages and a burnt studio camera. For some reason, parts of the remaining cloth on the stages had what looked like bloodstains on it. While I was walking back through the sound set, I heard male laughter and the movement of a lanky figure near the back. I absolutely love that our narrator can hear that it was the sound and movement of a lanky figure near the back. Was the figure like making Waluigi noises? I got the hell out of the sound set and blocked the door with a burnt desk. After that close encounter, I went over to the storage room and broke the rusted lock off of the door. So no one is investigating this fire, and apparently the lock is rusty despite this presumably being a modern studio. Also, it's wild that Happy Appy ended like 15 years ago from the time of this story, but all of this insanity is just happening now? It's like the narrator is causing all of this by simply watching the show. After I had opened the door, the room turned out to be just a vault of props that were used in the show. There was a mostly intact shelf to the right of the room, which held some reels of tape. After stealing them, I found a safe which had been partially melted into the floor. What kind of hellish inferno was this to melt a metal safe to the floor? Was the building like completely covered in thermite? After some force, I managed to rip it off the floorboard and haul it to the car. I don't know if you guys are aware of how heavy safes are or how hard it is to pry metal that has been essentially welded to the floor, but I would not make our narrator mad. After going into the storage room a third time, I heard what sounded like wood burning, so I checked the sound set to see what was going on. The entire back wall had been lit ablaze by some vandal. I quickly checked the storage room for any more artifacts, which it didn't have, and ran out of the building before the entirety of it started to burn up. I seriously wonder who the hell had done this. Is Forenzik so dedicated to kill me that he would set an entire TV studio on fire to do so? Was it even him at all? Forenzik is so dedicated to killing the author that he lit a fire in a studio 2 states away from him. Just absolutely masterful gambit right there. Also, one last oddity in the timeline here. The narrator posts on the 24th, but visits the studio on the 25th after a 20-hour drive. So where was he posting on the 24th? August 1st, 2011. After dealing with some personal things, I got around to breaking the lock of the safe. The contents were one thing, and that was Happy Appy's puppet doing the death smile. I would love an insight into these personal things that the narrator deals with. I'd like to imagine they're very mundane, like roommate struggles or something like that. Like maybe he's behind on doing his dishes and his roommates are mad at him and he's like, sorry guys, I'm being stalked by a shadowy creature and I don't have time for all of this. Even though I really don't want to own him, I'll keep the puppet in case it helps me find out more about the show's history. The tapes weren't anything special, they were just Happy Appy's earlier episodes in a higher quality than the DVDs. I love how the narrator refers to the puppet as him. That level of personification seems appropriate given the level of obsession the narrator has with Happy Appy. I also love the image of the Happy Appy puppet being locked away in the melted safe like some sort of evil demonic relic that has been locked away from the rest of the world. August 2nd, 2011. On closer examination though, the Happy Appy puppet has a few anomalies. First off, the right hand was quite obviously reattached, which could suggest that someone accidentally ripped Happy's hand while trying to get him to hold something. One of his eyes was a darker blue than the baby blue his eyes normally were, and his leaf was broken off halfway. Those baby blue eyes must have been burned into our poor narrator's mind. It'll probably haunt him as long as he researches the show. Finally, there was writing in the back of the puppet's head, but some of it had been smudged. Property of Nickelodeon Studios, owned by ... It also turns out that the tapes were, like the Happy Appy puppet, different from what I had thought. For Happy's vacation in Hurt Happy, the scenes with missing frames had those frames back. However, what was more interesting was that the Hope poster that was in Happy's van was missing from those tapes. I don't even want to begin to unpack what the story might be trying to tell us by making Happy Appy an Obama supporter. That's just too much to get into right now. I'm also just now realizing that the Hope posters are another reference to him having a poster of something that existed in the future that he should be able to see by now. I just thought it was a weird Obama Easter egg. I guess that these tapes were actually in work print quality and not the finished product. If that's so, it doesn't explain why the tape that held Happy Goes to School had the beginning of the towers on it. I don't think that anything anybody could even hope to ever say could possibly explain the presence of 9/11 in those tapes, and also in this story in general. I can only guess that the towers was originally a normal episode in production, but some jerk edited it and ended up canceling the series. I like this idea that a vengeful editor inserted references to a future event for the sole purpose of canceling Happy Appy, presumably because they weren't getting paid enough or something. Imagine being so much of a hater that you become a precog for 9/11. August 4th, 2011. When I was getting the mail at night, I managed to find Forenzik looking at me from the garage. This time, however, I finally took a picture of him. In my Goatman video, I mentioned that I didn't really believe in cryptids, and then somebody in the comments got very mad at me and called me dumb for not believing in them. If every supposed picture of a cryptid didn't look like the picture that the narrator snapped of Forenzik, then I would probably be more inclined to believe in their existence. Even though it's incredibly blurry, at least I have a photo of what he looks like. The odd thing is that unlike regular times, where Forenzik has Happy's death smile on his mask, he had a frown on his mask. I wondered why he wore a frowning mask this time, until I smashed and burned the Happy Appy puppet, because I think it's powering Forenzik. This is another weird use of the word until. You'd think that him smashing and burning Happy Appy would clear up the confusion he had about the mask, but we aren't told about that. In my last Happy Appy video, some people suggested that the story wasn't originally written as a joke, but the author went back and claimed it was a joke when it was received very poorly. I'm going to be honest, as much as some old creepypastas can be poorly written and boring and nonsensical, I just don't see a world where any of this was written seriously. There is an insane level of dedication to creating this garbage story that continues to fascinate me as I read more and more of it. When I was growing up, my brother and I would sometimes go out to our backyard and just start digging a hole for seemingly no reason. We just liked the idea of sitting down and digging a hole. Something about dedicating ourselves to what was a completely meaningless task was kind of exciting and satisfying to us, I guess. I have to imagine that Happy Appy is the metaphorical hole in the backyard for the author. This story doesn't add anything to society, it just exists to exist and not much else. And I guess that makes me the biggest fool, because not only have I dedicated myself to reading this entire story, but I'm also scripting, recording, and editing these videos about it. The hole that Happy Appy creates is a black hole. It sucks everything I used to love and care about into it, and it does nothing but destroy me, yet I always come back. Back to the story. I could be wrong though, which is probably true. I kept the tapes though, as they are good enough to keep. August 15th, 2011. I apologize for not updating this blog lately. I really haven't had much to say, but I've recently been crept out. What a strange mistake to make here. I don't know if I've ever seen someone use the term crept out before. It's not that huge a mistake, but it keeps cracking me up for some reason. I thought I had destroyed the Happy Appy puppet 3 days ago, but when I went into the kitchen to make a snack, I saw it lying on the counter without any damage done to it. Please tell me that we're about to start diving into creepy doll territory. I need this story to do something more interesting than what it's been doing so far. Although maybe they should save the creepy doll for the end, like the greatest creepypasta of all time, Sonic.exe did, with its masterful conclusion that still haunts me to this day. Also, I have had many nightmares about Happy or Forenzik. The most vivid one, based off of the towers, occurred to me tonight. Thank goodness we're getting more explicit 9/11 imagery. I was really worried this video wouldn't have more explicit 9/11 imagery. I saw a completed Freedom Tower being hit, almost ironically, by a large airliner. Onlookers were either running away, crying, or praying to God. I remember that I was one of the onlookers, unable to move an inch. Right next to me was a ripe apple tree, which oddly hadn't been knocked over by debris. On the pavement, there was an apple that had presumably broken off of the tree. I picked it up and almost got to take a bite out of it. However, I noticed that Forenzik was watching me from a nearby bush. As I bit the apple, it suddenly grew a mouth and began screaming loudly. Horrified, I threw the apple to the pavement, which injured it more. As soon as the apple hit the ground, Forenzik disappeared from the bush. As the scream from the apple grew louder, the fires on the Freedom Tower kept flaming on until the thing collapsed, sending a cloud of debris towards the onlookers. Right before I was hit, I jumped out of bed, screaming in horror. It's borderline impressive how you could write a dream sequence that appears to be full of symbolism that has absolutely zero depth behind it. Absolutely wild. I don't know why, but it seems like Forenzik and Happy are the only things I can really think about anymore. Thanks to them, I think I'm going insane. Yeah, I don't know if that insanity is 100% caused by Forenzik and Happy Appy. I think you were a good amount of the way there before all this started, buddy. First off, I can't see fruits without thinking about Happy Appy in any way. Thankfully, though, I don't think about Happy Appy when I see a vegetable, unless I find an episode involving a vegetable clay puppet. Oh no. The narrator's irrational fear of apples has spread to all fruit. Soon you'll be afraid of anything happy, and then the fear will spread to a crippling fear of forward wind stars. Secondly, I fear tall and skinny, and especially both people, a lot more than I used to, mainly because of Forenzik and how he's very tall and skinny. I love the assumption here that even before all of this, the narrator was somewhat scared of tall and skinny people. I hope we never cross paths for his sake. And when I see a playground, I imagine Happy Appy in that one dark, plant-filled abandoned corner of the playground, doing a death smile and looking like he's ready to murder every child. I really regret researching the show. I really regret researching this creepypasta. I've learned more about Fright House Screamers, but it's not as related to Happy Appy as I thought it would be. Once your mind has given in to the pure insanity of Happy Appy, you'll start to see that Happy Appy is related to everything. Or so I've heard. I'm not like speaking from experience or anything. August 16th, 2011. Today I went to look for Happy Appy on the TV. Even though it sounds idiotic to look for a show on the channel that it's banned from, it's worth a shot. I woke myself up when Nick Jr. started and watched the shows for Happy Appy. It all went well, playing Dora the Explorer and Yo Gabba Gabba when a bumper aired. A woman's voice said, "And now we have something special to show you. Please welcome, for the first time in a decade, Happy Appy." Our narrator is the luckiest person on the planet. The one day that he decides to sit down and watch Nick Jr. is the one day they decide to rerun the 9/11 children's show. I was excited for that I would most likely see a new episode. Unfortunately, it was the school episode again. Even though I was disappointed, I was still elated from seeing an episode of Happy Appy air. At that point, I had a major question. Why did the episode air? I have a major question as well. Why are you elated in seeing Happy Appy on the air? This show has caused you nothing but suffering and grief, and you're still a ride or die for it? This story is like if the term tonal whiplash were distilled and then distributed in creepypasta form. I have no idea what's ever going on in the narrator's mind. It never makes any sense. Did a new employee mistakenly air the episode without knowing the history of Happy Appy? Or did someone else deliberately air them? If someone did air them deliberately, why did they? Was it Retro Day at Nick Jr. and they are allowed a showing of Happy Appy just for once? Or did someone know about my research blog and to help, they aired an episode? I think if someone knew about your research blog, for one, they probably would have stopped reading after the first couple posts, but also, they would probably stay as far away from Happy Appy as possible. This story is like a modern retelling of Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill only for it to tumble back down. The narrator keeps pursuing this show, finding something horrifying, forgetting about said horrifying thing, and then goes right back to pursuing the show. It's surreal. Hey, I've got two things to tell you. First, I will try to make at least one post every day, all the way until when I quit researching Happy Appy. Respectfully, I don't know if volume is the issue with this blog. Second, I'm keeping track of the episodes. Here are my guesses for the episode list. Anything with parentheses describes the episode better. Happy Fixes Kids, ? Happy Fixes Kids Part 2, Happy Fixes Kids Part 3, The Towers, Happy the Doctor, the one with the green fluid needle, the crashed plane, and Happy's skin peeling off, ? Happy's Trick, the Happy Appy movie parts 1 and 2. I know there are only 15 episodes mentioned here, but I haven't discovered the other 9 yet when I published this post. August 18th, 2011. I was on YouTube when I came across a Happy Appy video. It was named The Happy Dance and was a promo that aired on Noggin. In it, it showed Happy moving around like he was breakdancing. The music was slightly distorted, but had someone making and failing at beatbox noises. Accompanying it was some lyrics on how to do the happy dance. Fun fact, making and failing at beatbox noises is the term I would use to describe 99% of the people I've ever heard try to beatbox in my life. Do the happy dance. Jump to the left, jump to the left, jump to the left, jump to the left. Now jump to the right. Jump to the right, jump to the right, jump to the right. Now get down and scoot to your left. Scoot to your left, scoot to your left, scoot to your left. Now scoot to your right, scoot to your right, scoot to your right, scoot to your right. Do the happy dance. After that, it said, watch Happy Appy every Monday at 8 a.m. and it ended. I know it isn't a new episode, but it's a cute thing I saw. Very cute indeed, narrator. That Happy Appy would be a real aspirational figure for children if he wasn't constantly killing them and exposing them to major terrorist attacks. August 23rd, 2011. As I was looking over some posts today, I noticed a draft in the folder. Normally, I wouldn't have the drafts in there unless I had to finish the post on another day, so this stuck out as odd to me. I opened it, and I found out that Forenzik had somehow gotten into my blog. I'm guessing he used a keylogger, but anything's possible. Here are the contents. It's funny because you'd think in a competent story we would see the blog post that Forenzik wrote and it would seem very odd of place and then we get the explanation later on. That's typically a cool way to mix the story up, increase the tension, and add some spooky elements to it. Unfortunately, Forenzik left this post in drafts and didn't know how to publish it. Hello there, my good friends. Are you feeling well today? Good, because Garrison is not here today. Instead, you'll be getting a post from his favorite friend, Forenzik F. Forenzik. I was pretty sure that the narrator said that he gave Forenzik his name, but now we're seeing that his legal name is Forenzik F. Forenzik. I can only assume that the middle initial of F also stands for, you guessed it, Frederick. So life's pretty good from where I'm standing. I've killed a lot of people now. This year alone, I've killed Kevin Christensen and Tristan Ye. Amazing, isn't it? Well, just you wait. Once I'm done with Jim Forrester, I'll kill Garrison. And it ain't going to be pretty. What will I choose to kill him? Will it be the good old knife to the head? Or maybe I'll pick a slow and painful torture. I might not mentally scar him, but it is in the question. Oh, the possibilities are endless. Maybe a little pointless to mentally scar someone before violently killing them, but you do you, Triple F. But now there's a big question I will answer. What will I do with Garrison's body? Will I? And it ends there. Why did he leave off mid-sentence? Did his internet break down? Was he noticing that I was starting to wake up? Or maybe he got booted off somehow? I really don't know. All I know is that Forenzik tried to post on my blog and I'm not happy. Another classic instance of our narrator being mildly annoyed at a direct threat to his life by someone who has already killed a good amount of people. However, there was a sound clip left on the blog post. It was a 3-minute sound clip of static, with some voices talking here and there. I'll try to decode it later. August 24th, 2011. Today, the same person who uploaded the Kevin Christensen interview on YouTube added a new interview. This time, it was Jim Forrester being interviewed. He worked on some of the scripts for Happy Appy, including Nate Needs Help. In my initial draft of the script that I wrote for this video, I wrote that I really hoped that we'd get to learn more about the person who was uploading these interviews and seemingly following Happy Appy as well. Then I realized that would mean adding to the already massive length, the sheer girth of Happy Appy more than it already exists, so I sincerely hope we don't hear more about it. Interviewer: so were you one of the scriptwriters for Happy Appy? JF: unfortunately, yes. Interviewer: do you know what happened to Happy Appy? JF: well, we actually managed to pull off a third of the first season just fine, without any complaints whatsoever. We were all ready to begin the other thirds when we were canceled. Interviewer: why was the show canceled? JF: an accident happened. Interviewer: wait, an accident happened? What kind of accident could cause the show's cancellation? JF: during a break we did to get the employees some resting time, we made a joke episode for fun. The episode in question had 2 smoldering towers which were on fire. You know, looking at it now, it reminds me way too much of 9/11. The episode was aired because someone managed to sneak a tape and broadcast it on Noggin, and poof, the show was canceled. Good riddance. This is a major reveal. We now know that it was the animators who made the 9/11 episode for fun, and it wasn't like inserted in by some sort of paranormal means. So the Happy Appy crew just fully animated an episode that was almost a 1-to-1 replica of 9/11 and just never thought to mention it until now. I didn't know how this story could get more insane than Happy Appy being a supernatural tape that predicted 9/11, but somehow this is way worse. Interviewer: do you know who broadcasted it? JF: no. The only person I think that would broadcast it is, I forgot. It's been 10 years, you know? Interviewer: I can understand, Jim. Anyways, there's one last question. Who is the director of the show? JF: I don't know who the director is as well, but I can tell you one thing. He's most likely dead. I'm going to be dead if I read more of this story. Moving on. August 27th, 2011. Today, I found the torrent of another episode of Happy Appy called Me and Miranda / Happy's Van Breaks. Me and Miranda's plot was about boys no older or younger than 6 to 8 being bullied by a teenage girl named Miranda. Happy gives the kids bandages and advice to help them. I'm glad we're back to our roots of seeing Happy Appy give bandages to kids and trying to help them with their problems. It feels like coming home. He kept getting progressively angrier when the episode goes on, starting from being slightly irritated to being extremely pissed off. At the end, Happy Appy coldly says, "Bully one more kid and you will get a surprise, Miranda." She, almost mockingly, kicks a boy in the leg, and Happy Appy gets in his van and drives it at her. Right before the van runs over Miranda, the episode cuts to the credits, with promos for Franklin and Blue's Clues. I like how Apple calls this a surprise when him running down a kid with his car is honestly one of the more common things I could see him doing. Happy's van breaks start with the intro and immediately goes into the episode. Happy is putting a bandage on a kid's bruise when he notices that the van's engine is billowing smoke. He runs to it and notices that part of the van's engine broke. Happy steals a mechanic's toolbox and gets to work on the engine. When Happy Appy works on the engine, a kid kicks a soccer ball and it accidentally bounces off Happy's head, Angered, he gets a wrench, runs off screen, and beats the kid to death with it. Happy Appy being flustered while trying to repair his Ford Windstar with stolen tools, and then being accidentally hit by a ball and beating a child to death is peak fiction. He goes back and repairs the engine, replaces the coolant, and changes the oil. Weirdly thorough job done here by Happy Appy. While helping more kids around the playground, the mechanic, in response to his toolbox being stolen, breaks Happy's engine. Happy gets pissed and chases the mechanic in a POV shot. Eventually, Happy grabs the mechanic and stabs the back of his head with a screwdriver several times before the episode cuts out. Oddly, the chase scene didn't have Happy's hands in it, but someone's arms painted red. Maybe it's just me, but the sheer volume of murder in this story has rendered anything like this that might have been shocking at one point completely mundane. The show is also so poorly explained that I have no idea what Happy Appy even looks like. I know he's a puppet, but everyone else are all real humans, I'm pretty sure. And then all the stills of the show that we are shown are definitely not anything resembling claymation, so that doesn't make any sense at all. And they never seem to reconcile the fact that if Happy Appy is a tiny puppet, how is he killing regular-sized humans? How is a puppet beating a child to death with a wrench? Also, how is he driving his Ford Windstar? Is the car also tiny? If that's the case, how could it have killed a girl in this episode? None of this makes any sense, and I'm losing my mind. August 28th, 2011. Remember when I got those tapes from the now demolished studios? Well, I bought a small projector so that I could play the tapes to find out more about them. And, like what I saw when I closely inspected the tapes, there are more changes than I thought they had. Here's a list of what I could find in them. Happy's Vacation had stock beach music playing in the background of the beach scenes, while my former copy did not. I guess my old copies were the work print? Also, Happy sounds slightly different. Hurt Happy has the apple and the healing scene replaced with a tomato. I think this proves my theory that the apple thing was a mistake done by the producers. Happy Goes to School has an entire removed scene with a song in it. Taking place between the math and science scenes, it involves Happy going to a social studies class and finding a kid struggling with his homework about the American Revolution. Happy tells the kid to watch what the teacher is going to put on, which is the segment of Schoolhouse Rock about the American Revolution. Happy Appy just casually freebooting content in the 90s is wild. The boo-boo scene in Nate Needs Help is a lot shorter and overall less weird. And guess who I saw today? It was Forenzik as usual. Unlike most times, I got a good look at part of his face. Well, to put it shortly, he might be human. Might be. We've seen a picture of Forenzik. That dude did not look human at all, so you might need to get your eyes checked. This story is the perfect example of how not to pace a story. So many insane things have happened that should have led to the stakes being raised, but they never are. I think that's what makes reading this so infuriating. You'll have a crazy entry and are hoping that things are about to completely devolve, but then the story will just reset like nothing happened. In any normal story, the introduction of a stalker who has openly threatened to kill the main character would signal the end of these mundane catalogs of Happy Appy episodes. But in this story, there is no respect given to tension or continuity or structure. It defies every single rule of competent storytelling and just keeps going. It never ends. I'd love to sit down with the writer and see just how much of this was intentional, if there was any sort of like care given to the banality of the story, or if it was all just kind of like lazily thrown together. Because at this point, I've probably spent over 40 hours working on videos about Happy Appy, and I'm starting to wonder if that's more time than the author has spent on this story in its totality. September 2nd, 2011. I found, while searching torrents for Happy Appy, an intact version of the Happy Appy movie's bonus features. Visually, it wasn't very good. It was just a simple menu with a white background. There was one bonus feature, creating a Happy Appy episode. I downloaded it and watched it. It was around 30 minutes long and, like the title says, showed the making of a new episode which wasn't released called Happy Meets the Roo Bears, where Happy Appy is in a crossover with Aphex Twin. According to a worker, the episode would have been somewhere in season 2. Here's what happens according to the clip shown. Happy is in the playground when he sees a watered-down Roo Bear running around. Happy asks who he is. The Roo Bear doesn't respond. Richard drives in his long limo from Window Liquor. Happy and a Roo Bear heal a kid who accidentally hit his head on the swings. To be honest, I don't think Aphex Twin in a kid's show isn't as weird as, say, Jack Black and Sesame Street. It's just me, though. I don't even know who Aphex Twin is, and my mind is just too fried to even try to figure it out. It looks like he was an electronic musician who has kind of an edgy persona. I like to imagine that the narrator didn't even actually discover this episode. He just wanted to write some Happy Appy meets Aphex Twin fanfiction. September 3rd, 2011. Okay, there are two things I want to talk about on this blog post. First off, I've heard a rumor that there's an actual episode of Season 2 intact, but it's a very incomplete fan restoration, around 15% complete. I'm just going to say this now. But why would the show have any fans? I can understand liking the more appropriate episodes, but... The other day, I watched a Blame It on George video about a group of people's extensive research for the lost pilot of The Backyardigans. People will be fans of literally anything. I always like reading about and watching videos about lost media investigations because I personally have no interest in finding lost media, but I have a lot of respect for the people that track it all down. But beyond all of this, if there was a children's show that gave it prophetic warnings of future disasters, then I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in tracking it down. I'm honestly surprised that there aren't more people interested in Happy Appy, because if the Backyardigans pilot could attract a good-sized group of investigators, then you bet the 9/11 show would. Anyways, the rumor states that it was the very first episode of Season 2 called Camp Ah. In it, it starts with the intro, as always, but with some differences. First off, Happy didn't dance in the intro, but starred the new main characters, sort of like the CSI intro. As for the main characters, they are Happy himself, a man in a ski mask called Napoleon, and a little boy named Danny. I have a weird feeling that Napoleon could actually be Forenzik in a different outfit. After that, it cuts to a scene where Happy Appy is in his van, but there are two girls in the passenger seats. The girls are only clay apple heads on sticks with no arms or stems. Then how do you know that they're girls if they're just apples? Also, at least in the US, passenger seat refers to the seat next to the driver up front, so why are there multiple passenger seats here? After driving for a while, the van parks in the camp. Happy gets a washcloth, and he and the girls sit on it. For a while, they just sit on the cloth, staring at the sky. After a few seconds, another apple appears, looking like a stereotypical beach jock. He says, "Move it, ladies," although the quality makes it sound like, "Movie it, leddies." The second thing is that Happy Appy does not have an IMDb page. The page some people are mistaking it for is actually a TV show called The Happy Apple. I can understand why people would think it would be related to Happy Appy. Happy Apple being the rarely used full title of Happy Appy. When I mean rarely used, I mean rarely used. It was used only once in a TV guide preview. But about the Happy Apple, it's from the 1980s. How could you confuse a TV show from the 80s about an insurance company with a noggin TV show from the 1990s that has imagery of 9/11? And don't even get me started on Appaloosa horses. Just don't. I cannot express to you how relieved I was that the narrator did not start going on a long rant about Appaloosa horses. We really dodged a bullet there. The only thing that I know about Appaloosa horses is that they make it so you view all players at a distance of -1 in Bang the Card Game. Now there is a reference that only like 0.1% of my audience will understand. If you know, you know. September 4th, 2011. I finished decoding the sound clip and, well, when I began to decode it, I just heard static with some odd noises here and there. I tried reversing it, changing the pitch, slowing the speed, and adding volume with some successful results. At first it was just the sound of Happy Appy laughing. It wasn't a regular laugh, however, but one that sounded like he was injured. Soon after that, Happy started screaming and you could hear someone else laughing. Like Happy, it sounded like the person that had begun to laugh was also injured. I guess it's a child struggling against the murderous Happy Appy, but it could be damn near anybody. Again, I have to point out how funny it is that Happy Appy is constantly portrayed with some sort of physical ailment. The guy is just the most sickly horror antagonist I've ever seen. I wonder if it's a struggle for him to fit all of his child murdering in between his regular doctor's appointments that he has to attend to for his various maladies. September 5th, 2011. After 16 pages of a Google search, I found someone who said that they were a member of the staff who made Happy Appy. I was excited, so I got their address so I could meet them in person. It took a long time because the directions they gave me required to go through a lonely dirt road, and I thought that I would get my shoes dirty. How lucky is it that all of the creators of Happy Appy, a show created in California, seem to live in and around Aberdeen, Washington. The way this is written, it also makes it seem like the guy is within walking distance from the narrator as well, given that he's worried that he'll get his shoes dirty. Also, I'm currently working on my own short story that starts with the main character walking down a dirt road and noticing the dirt on his shoes. And I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a tinge of dread that filled me as I worried that this story was somehow subconsciously influencing my own personal writing. I don't think that's the case though. I mean, after the dirt road thing in my story, it's all about a claymation pomegranate that kills kids and then predicted the JFK assassination, so it's completely unrelated. Hey, can't be too cautious, can I? Well, anyway, I was at an angle where I could see the person who was standing near his house. I was right about to yell out to them, but I got a closer look and freaked out. It was Forenzik, standing near the house right behind the corner of a building I was about to pass. If I had passed it, Forenzik would have caught me off guard and stabbed me to death. I don't know why Forenzik had set this up, but he's definitely out to get me. He was still looking all the way that I was supposed to have come through and quickly checking his watch. So he didn't see me yet. He was human. He was wearing this weird mask that looked like a happy baby. and the mouth would often move, giving the impression that he was literally a baby face. His arms were bone skinny, and it looked like he needed to put on 20 pounds to be considered barely underweight. Casual body shaming of Forenzik going on here. He started getting more and more nervous and thinking that I wasn't going to show up. What was also of note was that near the house, there was a van that was very similar to the one that Happy rode. I ran off and went back to my house to tell you about this near-death experience, since it'll probably happen more and more often. A friendly reminder that in the first video I made on this, it was revealed that the narrator was a police detective, but has literally never once divulged any of this to any of the people that he works with. I like to imagine that our narrator is actually a 13-year-old kid who is just trying to impress the reader by saying that he was a police detective. That tracks with everything we've read so far. September 6th, 2011. Since I was freaked out by Forenzik and it is nearing 9/11, I rewatched the Towers episode again. There's a lot to unpack here. It kind of makes sense that you would rewatch this episode nearing 9/11. It's maybe a little strange, but I can see how that makes sense. But why was this viewing in response to being freaked out by Forenzik? That makes it seem like this was some sort of soothing ritual our narrator does to calm down. It's so weird. When I played it, I heard that faint whining noise in the background of the famous scene, and I instantly recognized it as a much quieter version of the decoded sound I was talking about 2 days ago. I don't know why that was in there, but it was. I still can't imagine out what could match that audio clip. We're just fully giving up on proofreading and coherent sentences now, huh? Fine, that's no. Good all cool with me. On just movelets. September 7th, 2011. I finally figured out what the sound clip was. While I was getting my groceries, it came to me that the voice that wasn't Happy sounded a lot like Forenzik. That probably should have been the first thing that your mind went to. Forenzik is the entity closest related to Happy after all. Quickly, I came up with the idea that the sound clip was Forenzik fighting with Happy. I don't know why he would fight Happy, an inanimate clay puppet, unless he had some sort of mental condition. I don't know why anyone would read this entire story unless they had some sort of mental condition. While I was on my way home, I saw a police car with its lights on and sirens blaring, so I followed it. When the police car stopped, I saw the cops leave the car quickly and run after a thin figure, which had dropped a gun and something red. Have we just completely forgotten the fact that our narrator is a detective? Is that just not part of this story anymore? Is there going to be literally zero consistency in this story at all? It was none other than the Happy puppet, with some dirt on it. I could have sworn that I saw Happy's mouth moving, but I was so freaked out that I wasn't sure if Happy's mouth was moving or not. Suddenly it came to me that if this figurine was the one I owned, Forenzik must have broken into my house. Before the police came back, I got into my car and went back home. Thankfully, it was unscathed, but one of the front windows was opened. Once I got in, I shut the window and looked for the Happy puppet, which I had put in the living room. However, it was nowhere to be found. After writing this blog post and go to bed, I'm buying a nice knife as soon as I can. I mean, this is 2011 in America, so you probably could have just picked up a gun at the grocery store while you were there. Also, it's insane that our narrator being stalked and harassed by a murderous entity has become so routine in the narrator's life that he can just go to sleep after having his house broken into. The apartment that I live in was built like 100 years ago, and it'll creak really badly at night, and sometimes just hearing one of those creaks while I'm watching or reading something spooky can freak me out pretty bad. So I wish I had the ability to sleep sound in the face of possible danger like the narrator has here. It's honestly kind of impressive. September 9th, 2011. I'm not sure how, but maybe the audio of Forenzik and Happy was planned to be in a future episode of Happy and got mixed up while they were putting the sound and music in. Was Forenzik around while Happy was being made and put himself in one of the episodes because he was in the staff? Or did he get so much infamy during the time that the producers decided that he was perfect material to mock? I still can't put this together. There's some good news about Forenzik though. To quote from today's newspaper, a crazed maniac was arrested last night after a robbery at a firearms store, a home break-in, use of firearms without a permit, linkage to various murders, and evading arrest. Some days I ask myself why I chose to get involved in Happy. Me too. September 10th, 2011. Well, tomorrow is going to be the 10th year since 9/11. Oh joy. In all seriousness, I have too many thoughts in my head right now. Will I be visited by Forenzik again, or will I be murdered in my sleep? Will my house burn down again, or will I have a normal day for once? I'm not going to make a post on September 11th, but on September 12th. I've got to give it to our narrator here. At least he has some sense not to post about Happy on 9/11. I'm glad he's sticking to that and showing some respect. That's just a really cool thing for him to do. Oh, and here's another revision of the list, with Season 2's 2 unreleased episodes and the duets properly listed. Happy's Vacation / Hurt Happy, Monkey Bar Mishap / Happy Goes to School, Nate Needs Help, no second part, Never Run with Knives / Happy Fixes Kids, Happy Fixes Kids Part 2 / Happy Fixes Kids Part 3, The Towers, Happy the Doctor, Happy's Van Break / Me Miranda, Happy's Trick / ? I think there's a second half, the Happy Appy Movie Part 1, the Happy Appy Movie Part 2, Season 2, Happy Meets the Roo Bears / Camp Ah, possibly vice versa. September 11th, 2011. I don't know what I expected. Let's just get this over with. I know I'm not supposed to make a post on September 11th, but I really had to get this post out. Last night, a certain someone went on my computer today. Luckily, the only things that Forenzik did was add 3 photos, a notepad file, and a badly distorted sound clip. Forenzik really seems to not want to kill the narrator. He snuck into his house when he was sleeping, and instead of killing him, he just messed around on MS Paint. The images and notepad file were made today, during 2:20 to 2:30 a.m., while the sound clip was created on July 14th of this year. All the images were made using Paint, had the file name image1 to image3, and all were badly drawn. Considering that Forenzik wears a gas mask and has long skinny fingers not fit to use my mouse, I knew they wouldn't in good quality. The first image was Happy Appy smiling on a dark red background, with a knife in one hand, and words that say, "That's natural, children." I found out that this one was actually a GIF and not a PNG. I stared at it, and for one frame, Happy had blood on his teeth and knife. The second image is the only one that does not show something. It is in fact a portion of the song, "They're Coming to Take Me Away, ha ha." I seriously want to know what the connection is between Napoleon 14 and Happy Appy / Forenzik. Is it that they're both disturbing to listen to, or is there something else I don't understand? The last image is more notable than the rest. It was Forenzik standing behind a black background which has "I'll find you" in red. The reason the photo is the most notable is that it shows Forenzik's long pale neck, gray clothes, and his unusual gas mask. It's actually more high quality than the other photo I took of him, even though the picture is quite bland. However, it doesn't show his filters, which is odd. I don't know if the narrator knows what a photo is, but this is definitely not a photo, so I have no idea what they're talking about. The notepad file contained another gibberish string. ADVMETOVP Why do I keep seeing these gibberish strings? Are they a secret code of some sort that Forenzik wants me to crack? Oh yes, about the sound clip. It starts with a bunch of ambience that sounds like it would belong in a factory. There was metal banging, steam blowing, all that stuff. It might be possible that it is just some of the distortion. In the background, I heard person walking, kicking over an empty tin can. After this, I heard a voice that sounded like it was someone beginning to say stop, before it goes to static for the rest of the clip. My best guess of what this sound clip could be is Forenzik killing someone. But looking at the date the file was made, which was on the 12th of July, could this sound file be related to Tristan Ye? I somewhat doubt it, to be honest. September 12th, 2011. Today was one of the worst days I've ever had, but at the same time, it was also one of the best. It all started when I was coming home after getting late night groceries on September 11th, when I noticed Forenzik was crossing the road to my house. Knowing that he would try to burn down my house again or steal something, I sped up and had the car ram him at full force. You know, as someone who hates when characters in horror stories aren't proactive enough when confronted with the villain, I actually really respect this. I'm secretly hoping that this wasn't Forenzik, but a guy dressed as him, and the rest of this story turns into a courtroom thriller about our narrator running down an innocent man. I heard a couple of bones breaking, and I knew I must have injured or possibly killed him. So I grabbed a flashlight and got out of my car, and to my surprise, I couldn't find Forenzik, although he made a trail of blood which pointed to where he went, so I followed the blood. 8 billion commas in that most recent sentence, holy goodness. The reason I even noticed that kind of thing is because I tend to only read about one sentence at a time when I'm doing a take for all these videos, since it's about all I can get out without constantly messing up. So these run-on sentences are very noticeable to me because it makes my recording process a little bit harder. Just some behind-the-scenes information I thought I'd sprinkle in. The trail led me to the nearby forest a couple of miles out of town. I had doubts about this. Forenzik had run off into the woods, and it was probably ready to attack me if I go too deep into it. I put those thoughts aside since I knew I had to kill Forenzik in one way or another, so I got my knife from the car and went out into the forest. Again, our narrator is a cop and should have a gun. Trying to kill the guy that just survived being ran over at full speed with a knife is a terrible idea. The blood stopped at a dirt trail, and a few meters from it was a sign. The letters were faded, but I shined a light on the sign, and it read, John Wilkerson Summer Camp. The John Wilkerson Summer Camp opened in 1996. The owner of the summer camp was, unsurprisingly, John Wilkerson, a 35-year-old man who had a mild case of schizophrenia. For years, it was a very popular summer camp. Kids kept coming to it, with some coming all the way from Maine and the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, in 2004, John Wilkerson's worsening schizophrenia reached a peak, and around 2 in the night, John got an axe, went into the log cabins and killed 6 children before disappearing into the woods. The summer camp closed down and the case remains cold to this day. Even though this entire story is pretty much just straight brain rot, I actually did learn something new here. I thought cold cases referred to strictly cases that hadn't been solved. So I was getting ready to roast the author for referring to a case where everyone knows who killed the kids as a cold case, but he's actually right here. A cold case is considered cold as long as the perpetrator has not been identified, charged, and convicted. We know John Wilkerson killed the kids, but he was never convicted since he went missing. Beyond that, it's also a crazy little side quest to introduce in the middle of the story. I'm way more interested in John Wilkerson than literally anything else in this story. If the theory of this all being a troll pasta is true, then I imagine the author didn't realize that a case could be cold if they convicted the killer and just put that in for comedic effect. I went up the dirt road to the summer camp, which was an overgrown grove. Over the years, the summer camp deteriorated, letting various moss and fungus grow in the rotting wood of the old cabins. I went into A first. Just for reference, the cabin series are A, 16 to 18-year-olds, B, 13 to 15-year-olds, C, 10 to 12-year-olds, and D, 7 to 9-year-olds. It looked like a regular cabin, minus the fact that blood was on the walls, beds were undone, some of the wood was rotting, and there was an axe stuck on the wall. Obviously, since an axe is a better weapon than a knife, I took it. I went to B and axed the door down. It was the same as A, minus the axe. Wild that they never took the axe in as evidence, nor cleaned the blood off the cabin walls in the 8 years since the murders took place. Pretty convenient for the narrator, I guess. As a side note, I love scary stories about things that happen at summer camps. I think it's such a good classic horror trope, so if you have any good summer camp horror media suggestions, then let me know. C was the same. Finally, I axed down D's door. As I walked in, I noticed the sound of a generator running. Knowing that this room was different from the rest, I turned the lights on. I wish I hadn't, because as soon as the old light flickered on, I was horrified at what I had seen. On the walls at the back of the cabin were the mutilated bodies of Kevin Christensen, Treston Ye, and Miranda, held up by meat hooks. I was completely paralyzed in fear for a minute. My breathing became more rapid, my heartbeat sped up, and I started sweating. Behind me, I heard an all too familiar slithering voice with what sounded like an East Coast accent. "Do you like my trophies?" This story is outing my complete inability to mimic literally any accent. I don't know what an East Coast accent even sounds like. All I can think of is a Boston accent. I jumped at the sudden voice and sharply turned around. It was none other than Forenzik, with a dull, rusty butcher knife. He was wearing a black butcher's robe, heavy winter clothing, and of course, his trademark gas mask. "Go on, Gerasim. Go on and take a closer look at my trophies. You know you wanna, out of your sick, morbid, but somehow natural curiosity." My only reference for this accent is Julianne Moore in 30 Rock, so that's what you guys are going to get. I also love that Forenzik talks in creepypasta speak. Sick, morbid, but somehow natural curiosity sounds like a line that you would find in any one of these stories. When he said that, I was both horrified and intrigued. Even though I had a paralyzing fear, I walked up slowly to the body of Kevin Christensen. His body had 3 slice marks on his chest. Half of the skin on his face was gone, and various nails were rammed into his body in such graphic ways that I can't mention it. His jaw was positioned to make it look like he was laughing at something. I had to stop Forenzik from killing any more people in this horrible way. There was a half-broken mirror next to Kevin's body. I picked it up with my shaking hand and saw Forenzik sitting down a chair, preparing to sharpen the rusty knife with a large grinding wheel. I love me some classic hyper-realistic violence. I'd almost forgotten that this story was supposed to be a creepypasta. I feel like this has become something more, something much worse. "So," Forenzik cheerfully said, "you found me at last. Congratulations, Gerasim. You deserve an award. Do you want to know what it is? What the hell did you do with him?" I yelled. Even though it wasn't what Forenzik was expecting, it seemed like the only thing I could say to him. I totally forgot that the person who posted this was named Gerasim. I'm assuming that's just his screen name and not his natural given name. But I don't know, Forenzik's birth name seems to be Forenzik, and I was informed when I made my Sonic.ex video that Sonic's real name is Ogilvy Maurice Hedgehog, so nothing is off the table. Also, it's so funny to me that Hedgehog is still Sonic's last name. I figured that was just like the animal he was, not his Christian birth name. "Well, since you asked, I, Forenzik at Forenzik, will tell you what he did," Forenzik said as he got up to stretch his arms. "But first, I'll tell you the reward. It's a knife to the throat." He laughed, which turned from a somewhat girly giggle to a psychopathic laugh. After catching his breath, he said, "To put a long story short, they were people who had annoyed me to a certain extent. First off, Kevin Christensen deserved his natural fate because he kept calling me slow and... not gonna say that word. I personally got offended by that. So, when you was stealing those 10 episodes, I managed to find and kill him. I watched you enter the house with that photo of Happy Appy in the bushes. After that, he sat down again and kept sharpening that knife. I could barely say, what about Tristan and Miranda? Don't mention Tristan yay. He was a foolish little kid who had the voice of Happy Appy. I don't know why they got that teenager to voice Happy Appy, even though I should have done it. It feels natural, wouldn't you say? Also, he was much ruder than Christensen, but not as bad as Miranda. So who told you about Tristan's death? Was it Jim Forrester? Is it? Oh, please tell me that this entire thing is all because Forenzik is some sort of jealous, failed creative that was mad that the people that made Happy Appy wouldn't cast him in it. Also, I've been imagining Happy Appy's voice as some sort of like gruff, older man, so I've had my world completely rocked by the revelation that he was voiced by a teenager. I was shocked, but slowly nodded my head. Forenzik put the now sharpened knife to one side and began to sharpen another dull knife. Suddenly he talked in a rather deadpan voice. I knew he'd tell you about his death. I mean, you do report the deaths of the employees at Happy Appy, right? I slowly nodded my head again. He sighed and said, well, I guess that's okay with me. Tell the world that employees of a once famous Nickelodeon show are dying. Forenzik slouched over and sighed again. He perked up and said worriedly, oh, I got distracted. Finally, there's Miranda. Well, you see, Happy Appy didn't kill her with his van and me Miranda. She got killed off for a while since she was very rude and kept insulting me, prompting me to hit her every time she made fun of me, and quite frankly, she deserved it in the end. The sudden tone shift made me jump a little. It didn't help that he laughed like an absolute maniac. The irony of the creepypasta with the 9/11 jump scare 2% of the way through it to say that a sudden tone shift made me jump a little. The sudden tone shift of Happy Appy caused me to start a downward spiral that shows no end in sight. I got distracted again. After the episode, Happy Appy and I killed her, as a natural, beautiful team. Now that I've told you their fates, go ahead, get closer to the bodies. Closer, closer! The tone of Forenzik's voice at the last closer made me jump a bit. Hearing him, a very deadpan serial killer, scream at me like that was shocking. The problem was that I was still paralyzed, so I couldn't move that great. Come on, Garrison, stop messing around. You don't want to end up like they did, right? Just go and get closer to the bodies now. And again I jumped. This time, Forenzik jumped out of the chair and started forcibly pushing me toward Tristan's body. I heard him begin to growl in fury. Tristan was as disfigured as Kevin was. He had the same slice marks but in the abdomen area. His facial skin was also gone, but was sloppier than Kevin's mutilation. He was also laughing, but it was more forced, like Forenzik dug his hands in his jaw and forced it open. I had one more thing to say to Forenzik before I planned to kill him. What about the sound file left on my computer? That one sounded like it was in a factory. What was that? I don't know about you guys, but I was like expecting a sweet one-liner here as the last thing that the narrator had to say Forenzik before he killed him. But it's also on brand for him to ask a Happy Appy lore-related question instead of anything actually meaningful or clever. Now that's some consistent writing. Oh, it was me killing Tristan. Don't ask why, but I love to record people's death cries as I kill them. It sounds so natural to me, if you will. He muttered something that I could barely hear, but it was basically along the lines of, damn, I need to stop saying natural. This is literally me when I write my scripts. How on earth does this feel so relatable? I have way too many phrases that I lean on too often when I'm making my videos. So at the end of the day, Forenzik and myself are not so different after all. Maybe I'm destined to become the new Forenzik, to continue his legacy. Only time will tell. He replied with, now that you've seen Kevin and Tristan's bodies, how about you see Miranda's? It's the best in my opinion since she deserved her fate the most. And again, I jumped. I moved to her body just so that I wouldn't be screamed at by Forenzik again and possibly piss him off so much that he would murder me. Unlike the others, Miranda was barely recognizable. Pieces of her flesh and organs had bite marks in them, and her limbs were dismembered. Again, she was laughing, but this time, I couldn't tell at first. I stole the broken mirror and noticed Forenzik was slowly holding up a second knife he had sharpened in his left hand to backstab me. Forenzik said, well, now that you've got all your questions answered, it's time for you to go. No, I screamed before taking out the axe and striking his left arm. He laughed in half agony, half enjoyment while I chopped it off. After chopping off his arm, I ran out of the house, leaving the axe with him. Outside, I found a can of gasoline. I dumped the gasoline all over the house. Pour a thing of bleach on him as well. It's the only way to truly kill him. When I was finished, Forenzik woke up. Realizing what I was doing, he grabbed the axe I had and a bag full of weapons and ran off into the woods. I got a match and burned the cabin down. For a moment, it felt very satisfying to destroy Forenzik's hideout the same way he had destroyed my former house. The short story I'm writing also features something being burned down, specifically with gasoline, so I'm starting to actually get worried that Happy Appy has incepted this idea into my mind. But with that explosive ending, I think I'm going to have to call it a day with this video. I'm pleased to say that we're about halfway through the original Happy Appy story. I will be back for part 3 as soon as I can will myself enough to read through more of this slop, but until then, I'll be making videos on creepypastas that I actually like, and horror literature. Sorry that this video took a little bit longer than usual to put out. I was kind of in a creative rut, and then Silksong came out and that took up all of my time. But I'm hoping to get back into my usual routine of making videos every 4 days or so. Be on the lookout for more of my content in the future. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please do. I'm trying to reach 100,000 subs at the end of 2025, and I'm getting very close, so helping me hit that goal would mean a lot to me. Thank you all so much for the support. It really does mean the world to me. I'm very grateful to have an audience that seems to be pretty understanding of when I need to take a break. Like I said, there will be a lot more stuff coming soon, and I started a whole bunch of scripts during my rut, so I've got a lot of things in the works already. I'm hoping to finish my short story in the next month or so, and when I finish it, I'll probably make like a Substack to post it on, so be on the lookout for that. A massive thank you to all my gold tier channel members: Amanda Mapes, Lucas Fernando, Chris Lamb, Blue Radio Media, Tyler the Leper, Mishjoy18, Cherry Shark, Moonson Blog, Starlight Pink, Jack Samora, Amanda Castillon, Arcade Link Author, The Official Gar, Bad Flow, Hi, Jenna Berry, Semra, Laura Gonza, Classic Pats Games Plus, Miranda M, Ben Best, Marin Elizabeth, Anexonym, Digital Fox, Sherbert, Emilio Nomura, Temple, Jupiter Rainstorms, Maddie, Alice Hale, Morphogenic Ange, B, Jess, Miley Bop, Abigail Wagner, Sunray Productions, Canadine, Uton, Emma Geese, Site 42, Maya S, Moss, Red, Zapodapos, Ezra, FM, I Like Bread, Alicia, Out of the Fandom, Chipsa, Hito Brian, Liminal Lake, Don't Play Brass Beast on Blue, Yum the Epic, Spirit Hotline, Furbus GDDC, Ketcher Elizabeth, Mayfield, Shruby, Litcher Something, Jazz, Hexmaniac Rafa, Homie Gaming, Sue, Bundle of Sticks, Junie, Danny, Silent Trails, Jesse Salos, Steel Cut Oaths, Veronica Heredia, Phantoms Forever, Ashley, Coco Boko, BB, Archie, Felly, Tommy, Killer Ray 257, Jojo, An Otter in a Trenchcoat, Floropause, Icky Teal, JLK, Thespian Rose, Safety Waffles, 731 Hamsters, Corked Back Ruler, Toby Dandelion, Tiny Moss Patch, Mary A, and Charlie Smidge. Thank you so much for your continued support of the channel, and thank you to everyone for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya. Take me up again, let me see the stars. Is there life on Mars? 'Cause I've run out of luck here on Earth. I'm a wanderer. Another trip around the sun makes these memories flood, and I could wash it down with the atmosphere. You're cool blue and crystal clear. I'm an astronaut flying above, but can't fall in love. Floating alone, brave enough to see the cosmos, too scared to say hello. And I know one day I'll be gold,